The sound of a high-pitched scream tore through the quiet morning, followed by an unmistakable bang. The birds that had been peacefully pecking at the ground scattered in a flurry of wings. A few cows lifted their heads, chewing lazily as if they had seen it all before. But the best part, right in front of me, sprawled in a tangled heap of hay and misplaced grace, was a woman with designer sunglasses askew on her face, a shattered phone just inches from her outstretched hand, and the undeniable imprint of my donkey hoof on the back of her pristine white yoga pants. Now, let me back up and tell you how we got here. It all started about a week ago when I first noticed an unfamiliar car driving past my property. Slowly, carefully, as if the driver was scoping out the place. Living in a small village, I knew every truck, tractor, and car that regularly rumbled down the road. But this sleek, shiny SUV stuck out like a sore thumb. I figured it was just some lost city dweller trying to find a weekend getaway. But the thing was, the car kept coming back every morning like clockwork. It would cruise by, pause near my barn, and then disappear down the road. My neighbor, Old Man Jenkins, had a theory. She's one of them social media folks, he said, spitting a sunflower seed into the dirt. Come to take one of them fancy pictures and pretend she's some farm queen, probably looking for a rustic look, or whatever nonsense they call it these days. I chuckled at the thought, but didn't give it much importance, that is, until the car didn't just pass by. One morning, I stepped onto my porch with my coffee only to find the very same SUV parked near my fence. The driver, a woman with overly highlighted hair, designer boots that had clearly never touched a patch of dirt before, and sunglasses too large for her face, was walking toward my barn like she owned the place. I set my mug down, watching as she moved with the confidence of someone who believed fences and private property signs were merely opinions. She held her phone up in front of her, smiling, angling herself for a selfie. Then, as if stepping into a fantasy world she had imagined in her head, she twirled in a slow spin, her arms stretched out like she was some kind of farm goddess. That was my cue. I took my time walking down to meet her, boots crunching against the gravel. She was too busy adjusting her hair and snapping pictures to notice me until I was standing just a few feet away. When she finally did, she let out a tiny squeal, placing a hand over her chest as if I had startled her from a deep meditation. "Oh, hello there," she said, her voice dripping with artificial charm. "This place is so adorable. I just had to get a few pictures." I glanced at the no trespassing sign she had so gracefully overlooked. "You realize this is private property, right?" She waved a manicured hand in the air like she was swatting away a fly. "Oh, it's just a barn? I mean, come on, it's so scenic. You should really consider opening it up for visitors. Do you even understand how photogenic this place is?" Before I could respond, she gasped and pointed. "Oh my gosh, is that a donkey? That is so cute. What's his name?" I followed her gaze to Clyde, my old grumpy donkey, who was standing by the barn door, chewing on some hay, with an expression that screamed, "Not this again." "That's Clyde," I said, "and he doesn't like strangers." But Karen, because by this point there was no doubt in my mind that this woman was a full-fledged Karen, was already marching toward Clyde with her phone raised. "Oh, I have to get a picture with him. The lighting is just perfect right now." I opened my mouth to warn her again, but she was already leaning over the stall, flipping her hair and puckering her lips in what I assumed was her best attempt at a charming farm girl look. Clyde, unimpressed, flicked his ears. His patience was wearing. "You really shouldn't snap the camera flash." Went off. Clyde, ears pinned back. Karen giggled, angling herself closer. "Just one more." She never finished that sentence. In a blur of movement that could have been mistaken for divine intervention, Clyde turned, lifted his hind legs, and let loose. Karen didn't just stumble, she soared. One second she was standing there grinning at her phone screen. The next she was flying, limbs flailing before landing with an earth-shaking thud into the nearest hay pile. Silence. Then came the scream, a mix of horror, disbelief, and pure, unfiltered outrage. You, she sputtered, scrambling to sit up, hay sticking to her hair and clothes like nature's version of glitter. Your stupid mule just kicked me. He a donkey, I corrected, taking a slow sip of my coffee. And you were on his property, flashing lights in his face? Karen's jaw dropped. Are you kidding me right now? Do you have any idea who I am? I sighed. Nope, I'm an influencer, she yelled, as if the word itself was supposed to carry. Wait, I have thousands of followers. Do you know how much harm this is going to do to my brand? I could have been seriously hurt. I glanced at Clyde, who had already gone back to his hay, unconcerned. Doesn't look like Clyde gives a damn. She let out a strangled sound of frustration and scrambled for her phone. The screen was shattered, but that didn't stop her from jabbing at it angrily. Oh, just you wait. I'm going to post about this. My fans will hear about this. You'll be banned so fast. You won't even know what hit you. I chuckled, shaking my head. You go ahead and do that. Karen pushed herself up, dusting hay off her ridiculous outfit. And you better believe I'm calling the police. This is animal negligence. Your donkey is dangerous. I tipped my hat, barely containing my amusement. Be my guest. Just make sure to tell them why you were trespassing in the first place. Her mouth opened, then closed. For a split second, she actually seemed to realize how absurd she sounded. But then, true to her nature, she lifted her chin, let out a dramatic huff, and stomped off toward her car, mumbling under her breath as she drove away in a trail of dust. I turned back to Clyde. Good work, buddy. Clyde snorted and went right back to chewing his hay. Little did I know, this was just the start. Karen wasn't done yet, not by a long shot. The dust from Karen's tires hadn't even settled before my phone started ringing. I didn't have to look at the caller ID to know who it was. Sure enough, before I could even get back to the house, the sheriff's familiar voice rang through the speaker. Got a lady over here claiming she was assaulted by a... Hold on. There was a shuffling noise, followed by a barely suppressed chuckle. By a donkey. I sighed. Yep, Clyde did what Clyde does best. The sheriff snorted. She's demanding I come out there and take a report. Says she's pressing charges. Pressing charges for what? Trespassing? That's what I asked her. But she says you allowed a vicious animal to harm an unsuspecting visitor. Said something about animal negligence and emotional trauma. Also, apparently she has a huge online following, and I should think carefully before I ignore her. I rubbed my forehead. Fine. Come on out. Bring popcorn. It wasn't long before I saw the sheriff's vehicle rolling down the dirt road, kicking up a cloud of dust behind it. Karen's fancy SUV was parked right beside it, and there she was, pacing back and forth, phone in hand, talking in an exaggerated voice to someone probably recording a dramatic story for her followers. The moment I walked over, she turned, eyes burning. Oh, look who decided to show up. I hope you're ready for a court case. Because I am not letting this go. The sheriff adjusted his belt and looked at her, then at me. All right, ma'am, why don't you tell me exactly what happened? Karen tossed her hair, lifting her chin. I was simply trying to take some photos when this beast launched a full-scale attack on me. I was thrown to the ground, injured, embarrassed. And this man, she jabbed a finger in my direction, is fully responsible. The sheriff turned to me, expression unreadable. That true? I crossed my arms. Not exactly. She trespassed, ignored multiple warnings, and got in Clyde's face with her camera. Clyde expressed his opinion in the most direct way he knows. The sheriff scratched his chin. And you got proof of that? Karen smirked, clearly expecting me to struggle for words. Unfortunately for her, I didn't need to. Sure do, I said, pulling out my phone. Security cameras caught the whole thing. Karen's smirk froze. I tapped the screen, and there it was. The crisp HD footage of her strutting into my barn like she owned the place, ignoring every warning sign and shoving her phone at Clyde's bored face. Then came the legendary moment when Clyde delivered his famous kick, sending her sprawling into the hay. The sheriff watched in silence, his lips twitching as he replayed the moment of impact. Then after a long pause, he cleared his throat. Well, ma'am, from what I'm seeing here, looks like you were somewhere you weren't supposed to be. provoking an animal, and got a fair response. I'd say that's more on you than on the donkey. Karen's jaw dropped. Are you serious right now? The sheriff shrugged. You trespassed, lady. That donkey had every right to defend himself. If anything, you're the one looking at legal trouble. Karen's face went from red to white to an unhealthy shade of purple. This is insane. You're supposed to be on my side. This is animal assault, negligence. Do you even know who I am? The sheriff sighed. Ma'am, I don't care who you are. What I do care about is the law. And from what I'm seeing, the only crime here is you ignoring private property signs and bothering a working farm animal. Karen let out a strangled noise. This isn't over. She seethed. I will be pressing charges. I will be posting about this. You're both going to regret this. The sheriff tipped his hat. You do what you got to do. Just know, if you keep harassing this man, you'll be looking at a trespassing charge real soon. Karen huffed, spinning on her heel and stomping back to her SUV. She yanked the door open, got in, and slammed it shut with enough force to make me wonder if she'd break her own window. A second later, the car roared to life, and she sped off, kicking up a cloud of dust in her way. The sheriff let out a long whistle. I swear, some people just look for trouble, I chuckled. Oh, she's not done. People like her never let things go that easily. Sure enough, that night I got a taste of just how far she was willing to take this. My phone started buzzing with notifications, dozens, then hundreds. Confused, I opened up one of the messages. Dude, you're famous. Some influencer lady is raving about you. My stomach sank as I clicked the link. Karen had posted a dramatic, tear-filled video recounting her traumatic experience. According to her, she had been brutally assaulted by a violent, neglected, rabid donkey while simply trying to take some innocent pictures. She claims she had been thrown to the ground, left with serious injuries, and was now dealing with crippling stress from the attack. The worst part, her followers believed her comments were flooding in. That's horrible. That farmer needs to be shut down. OMG, I am never supporting that place. File a lawsuit. That's animal abuse. I sighed, rubbing my temples. Great. Just what I needed. But before I could even think about damage control, something unexpected happened. A local from the village, one who had seen the security footage, uploaded the real video. It spread like wildfire. Suddenly, the comments took a very different turn. Lamau. She got what she deserved. Oh my god, watch the donkey's face before he kicks her. He's so done with her nonsense. Wait, she trespassed and tried to act like the victim? Nah, this is gold. Within hours, the tide had turned. People weren't mad at me anymore. They were laughing at her. Memes started circulating. Someone even edited Clyde's kick to make it look like he sent Karen flying into space. And just like that, Karen's plan backfired spectacularly. I leaned back in my chair, watching as the internet absolutely roasted her. Guess you should have just left Clyde alone, I muttered, grinning. The fallout from Karen's viral humiliation was both entertaining and exhausting. The internet had torn her to pieces, turning her into a walking meme. Overnight, the video of Clyde sending her flying had been edited 100 different ways: slow motion replays, dramatic music, even a version where someone added superhero sound effects as if Clyde had just landed the punch of the century. Every corner of social media was laughing at her, and the hashtag Donkey Justice started trending. But if there was one thing I had learned about entitled people, it was that they never knew when to quit. Instead of taking the hint and slinking away into irrelevance, Karen doubled down 2 days after the internet flipped on her. A man in a suit showed up at my front gate. At first, I thought maybe a news station had sent someone out to cover the story. But as soon as he introduced himself, I knew exactly what was coming. I'm here on behalf of my client, Miss Karen Hastings, he said in a sharp tone, adjusting his tie like he was about to lay down the law. She is prepared to move forward with legal action regarding the injuries sustained on your property. I almost laughed. Almost. So let me get this straight, I said, crossing my arms. She broke onto my property, harassed my donkey, got exactly what was coming to her, and now she wants to sue me for it. The lawyer's face twitched. like even he wasn't fully convinced of the case he was trying to push. Miss Hastings maintains that your donkey exhibited aggressive behavior resulting in physical and emotional distress. Given the hardship she has suffered, she is prepared to seek damages in excess of $50,000. I let out a low whistle. 50,000, huh? That's an expensive lesson in minding your own business. He cleared his throat. If you would prefer to settle out of court, Miss Hastings is willing to negotiate for a lesser amount. I couldn't help but grin. Oh, don't you worry. I'll see her in court. The lawyer hesitated like he hadn't expected that answer. Most people would have collapsed at the threat of a lawsuit. But I had two things Karen clearly didn't: common sense and proof. A week later, I found myself in a small-town courtroom watching as Karen dramatically dabbed at her eyes while recounting her trauma for the judge. Your Honor, I still can't sleep at night, she sniffled. The fear, the sheer horror I felt when that beast attacked me. Miss Hastings, the judge interrupted, adjusting his glasses. According to security footage, you entered the defendant's property without permission, ignored clearly posted signs, and approached an animal despite warnings from the owner. Is that correct? Karen's fake tears dried up immediately. Well, I mean, yes, technically, but that doesn't justify. Did the defendant invite you onto his property? She shifted uncomfortably. Not exactly, but I'm an influencer. I was just. The judge held up a hand. So you knowingly trespassed, ignored warnings, frightened the animal, and are now attempting to claim damages for an injury that was entirely your fault. Karen's mouth opened and closed like a fish gasping for air. The judge sighed and turned to me. Do you have a counterclaim? I nodded. I'd like to file for trespassing, damages, and harassment. Her social media slander also led to temporary business losses. Until the truth came out, the judge didn't even hesitate. Case dismissed. The plaintiff will pay the defendant's legal fees and damages for trespassing. This court is adjourned. Karen's jaw dropped. Wait, that's not. But the judge had already stood up and left the courtroom. Outside, as I walked toward my truck, Karen stormed after me, face contorted in fury. You ruined me, she shrieked. Do you have any idea how many followers I lost over this? How much money I lost? I turned, raising an eyebrow. Sounds like your problem. She let out a frustrated scream and stomped off, disappearing into her SUV. I watched as she peeled out of the parking lot, probably off to find her next target. The story might have ended there, but life has a funny way of delivering one last dose of justice. A few weeks later, I got a call from Old Man Jenkins. You seen the news? He laughed. That city lady got caught trying to sneak into another farm. This time she tried to pose with a bull. I nearly dropped my phone laughing. Apparently, Karen hadn't learned her lesson. She had gone to another farm, one with an even larger following than mine, thinking she could stage another perfect rustic photo. Only this time, instead of a patient donkey, she had wandered into the pasture of a very protective bull. The farmer, who had already heard about her tricks from my case, had security cameras rolling the footage of Karen running for her life, screaming as the bull chased her out of the pasture. Went viral in seconds. The internet lost its mind. People who had felt bad for her before now saw the pattern. She wasn't just an innocent victim. She was a repeat trespasser who had finally met her match. The memes exploded all over again. Hashtag Karen versus farm animals became a thing. Someone even made a compilation video of her getting kicked by Clyde, then running from the bull, all set to cartoonish music. Her influencer career over, her reputation shattered, and me, well, Clyde became a local icon. Tourists started showing up at the farm just to see the donkey that kicked Karen. People wanted pictures, merch, even Clyde-themed souvenirs. I had no choice but to capitalize on it. I printed out t-shirts that said, "Respect the donkey," with an image of Clyde looking unimpressed. They sold out within days. In the end, Karen's bad decisions made me more money than I ever could have imagined. My business thrived. Clyde got extra apples from admiring visitors. And as for Karen, well, she disappeared from social media entirely. Maybe she finally learned to stay out of places she didn't belong. Or maybe she just ran out of farms to trespass on. Either way, one thing was certain. Clyde had delivered the greatest message of all.